Hi, my name is Casey Hirsch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, author, and founder of LightYourSparkle.life. I'm here today with Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum. He is a world-renowned integrative physician, an expert on autoimmune illnesses, and many of you have used his smartphone app, Cures A to Z. He also is a best-selling author, and there's a link at the end of this video to his website. I have followed his work for many years to support me in my own struggles with autoimmune illness, and I'm very excited to spend some time with him today and ask him some questions.
Casey, a pleasure to be with you today. And for those of you with autoimmune illness, these are incredibly treatable, unless you go to your doctor, who is often going to be very unfamiliar with the research on how to get well. So this is a matter of learning to get empowered yourself, and this information will do that.
I like that, empowerment.
Mhm.
So tell me, Dr. Teitelbaum, do you think that autoimmune diseases are becoming more common, or are they just more frequently diagnosed?
They're becoming the rising epidemic. It's important, as a physician, I've looked at medicine and illness throughout history. So what we would find is that in much of human history, it was malnutrition, injury, and infections that killed people. In the 1900s, it was mostly heart disease, stroke, and a little bit of diabetes. And now what we're finding is that the number one fastest rising area of illness is autoimmunity. And in this century, it will become probably the most important category, overshadowing even heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, things along those lines. We're looking to get pretty near to where the majority of people are starting to get, especially women, are starting to get autoimmune illnesses. And immune illnesses normally hit women 4 times as much as men. It is becoming much, much, much more common.
Wow, that's astonishing. It's almost as if it's an epidemic at this point.
It is an epidemic at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there any particular reason why you think they are becoming more common?
We're seeing a perfect storm for overwhelming our immune systems. Number one, if you look at the environment, there are 85,000 chemicals that have been added to the environment, which have never been seen by our immune systems ever in human history before recently. And our immune system is made to know how to recognize natural compounds and detoxify them. But things that have never been made in nature are totally foreign and can get pretty overwhelming to the immune system. Meanwhile, our diet has gotten really poor with associated gut infections from that. And that causes overload on our immune system with something called leaky gut. We're going to see nutritional deficiencies, some zinc, excess sugar. But here's a biggie, and something that's missed, Casey. Our immune system takes its direction from our psyche.
Mm.
And our perception of being under attack will drive the immune system to overdrive. I remember when I went to medical school, I paid my own way working as a nurse in Children's Hospital, and I worked on the burn unit, and I learned hypnosis to do dressing changes. And one of the things that shocked me was when I was taught that if you get a burn, go into a quick hypnotic state and just let your psyche know no injury, you won't blister. And being a
Wow.
Butterfingers, I burn a lot. And I haven't blistered pretty much since then. Um, and that blister is a response to the immune system perceiving a threat. Now, if you watch I hate to say it, news, because it doesn't even warrant that name anymore, but our current what you should be panicked about and why you should hate everybody networks. Um, you're going to feel like this world is a very dangerous, threatening place. And that puts our immune system on overdrive. And it gets exhausted and overwhelmed, and it strikes out instead of doing a focused strike where it needs to, it's just attacking everywhere, including our own bodies.
Mhm. So what you're saying is that the way we perceive the environment that we're in, threats, stress, all of those things, it's largely in control by our mind and how we perceive it. We have some influence over our immune system based on our perceptions.
How our mind perceives our environment tells our immune system how to work and how active it should be.
Hmm.
If we find the environment to be threatening, then the immune system will be striking out.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm particularly interested in that, of course, as a mental health therapist, because people who come to me with trauma, they have a history of looking at their environment as not being safe and dangerous. And there's still a disconnect between medical and mental health in terms of helping patients, especially with autoimmune conditions, understand that there is a process that's going on in their mind that they actually can have some ownership over, with being able to, learn how to alter the way that they perceive what's happening around them.
Totally so. And part of being empowered in our current healthcare system, it's important to know a very simple and important detail. That's virtually everything that we're taught as physicians once we get out of medical school, and more even in medical school,
Hmm.
is simply paid advertising by the drug companies.
Hmm.
But it's presented as if it's science. It's one major journal editor called it slick advertising masquerading as science, which means all your doctor will know about is what the newest, most expensive treatment is. And they will think that they're being good scientists when really they're just being advertising junkies and they don't know it. Anything that's cheap, your doctor will simply not hear about the research. And that's just sad. He'll think that because they didn't hear about it, it doesn't exist.
Right. Right. And that means that it's really up to the consumers and all of us to be informed of that fact, and to know that when we go see physicians, what they're suggesting isn't the only option, that there are many options. And a lot of times
Yes.
we're not receiving the information that we really need in order to heal.
Yes, when they are suggesting something, picture a drug company executive over their shoulder whispering in the ear that the doctor doesn't see,
Hmm.
and what's coming out of their mouth or what the drug company voices in their head are telling them to do. But when the doctor says they can't heal you or help you, let them know thank you for being honest, because they can't.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean there's no effective treatment. For most of these things, there are highly effective treatments. Your doctor's just not aware of the research on them.
Yeah, and that's definitely been my experience. I feel like physicians have told me everything from my Crohn's disease is incurable, that it's not a matter of, if I have a surgery, it's a matter of when. I've been blessed to not have any surgeries. And
Mhm.
oftentimes they've said the only way to survive it is immunosuppressant drugs.
Which coincidentally happen to be about ka-ching, $24,000 a year if they're doing the biological modulators, very profitable. What the doctors don't know is the research that shows for inflammatory bowel disease, those only work for 2 years and then stop. So those should be saved for when people are on the ropes and have no other choice, because
Sure.
you have one shot in that gun. But no, it's like now, money now.
Yes.
You know. Boom. So, but for Crohn's disease, you treat the underlying infections, candida, parasites, both of which are routinely missed by physicians. You use NAET for the food sensitivities and allergies. There's just a whole host of things. Boswellia, Bosmed is a very good product, very good for inflammatory bowel disease.
Hmm.
Has your doctor ever mentioned any of those?
No, no. No, and the truth is, you talked about empowerment when we first started. That has been the core of my mission and my advocacy for myself and for others, because I think we often feel like we're at the mercy of all of this education that physicians have and the status. And it's very difficult for, the layperson to go in and sit in the presence of someone who's so educated, and we believe that they know better than us. And to understand that this process is happening and that you have to be your own advocate is critical, and to not let hope die when someone tells you, this is incurable, because it's hard to digest that, so to speak, when you're told that. And that definitely sets up a framework in one's mind that your perception of your life becomes much more fear-based.
Yeah, it's kind of time to let go of things like the earth is flat, the earth is the center of the universe, and that your doctor knows everything. So
Yes.
those three myths are so out of date, shall we say. The new truth is that using the entire healthcare toolkit, including standard medicine, natural medicine, mind-body issues, and a host of other techniques, virtually everything is getting to the point where it can be effectively treated.
Hmm.
And some things you catch so late, like end-stage cancer. It's a different story, perhaps. But most other things, and even that's starting to fall to new research on treatments. Um, Almost everything I'm finding these days can get effective treatment, if not cure. And it's one reason it's so much fun being a physician.
Yes. Yes. Well, you talked about some alternative techniques. You mentioned NAET. Would you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Well, let's take a look. If we look at our immune systems being on overdrive and exhausted, so it's like an army in the middle of a battlefield. All of these officers are gone. You have millions running all over the place, bombs going off. They're just attacking everything wildly,
Yes.
as opposed to an immune system that's a well-regulated, run army that knows where to focus the attack, well-directed, the whole thing. So an autoimmune disease, you've got that former thing. Now, if you have a computer that's going totally fritzy on you, and you try to work it, and it's just nothing's working, and you call tech support, what's the first thing they tell you to do? Turn the computer off and reboot it,
Restart it.
turn it back on. Now, wouldn't it be nice if there was a reset button for the immune system?
Hmm.
And NAET is an acupressure technique. Regular acupressure won't work for this, but it's a specialized technique. There are thousands of practitioners worldwide. And it uses acupressure and muscle testing to determine what you're sensitive to and to desensitize you to one thing at a time. And when I first heard about this, I had horrible ragweed allergies. I was hay fever, sniffling, honking, blowing my nose all the time, miserable. And this gal told me that, oh, I can get rid of that in 20 minutes with an AT. And I said, that voodoo's not going to help me. Leave me alone. And one day I was especially miserable, and she said, stop being a nitwit and let me treat you. And I was like, okay. 20 minutes later, my hay fever was gone, never came back. It was like somebody turned a faucet off mine. I was like, what the? It was like
Yeah.
crazy. I was so impressed. Now, Churchill described medicine pretty well. He said, we often stumble over the truth, but usually get up, brush ourselves off, and quickly walk away before any real harm is done. Um, the problem that I have is that when something doesn't make sense, I look at it. So I
Uh-huh.
actually flew to California, met the gal who developed the technique. She's an MD, PhD, RN licensed acupuncturist, chiropractor with no ego. Interesting woman. Um, and we did a study using NAT for autism. And
Hmm.
23 of the 30 autistic kids were back in regular school at the end of 1 year, as opposed to 0 out of 30 in the untreated control group. So this is now
Wow.
a published study that I was a senior author on. So this is a very powerful but very gentle technique, one of many that can help people's immune systems hit the reset button and kind of restore factory default. Like, okay, now move
Mhm.
forward.
Why do you think, for me personally, I'm familiar with NAET. Thank you for that incredible description of it, because something I've struggled with is there's so many people who are quite sick, but when I suggest to them, try it, there's a reluctance for some folks.
Then let them be.
Let it be. We just get the education out there, and it's amazing that it's available.
Let people know what is and what's available. Open those doors, plant the seeds. When it feels good to them and they're ready to do so, that's the time for them to proceed, not before then.
Very
That's
true.
anything we're talking about.
Timing is everything.
It's what feels good to them, which is authenticity. That's everything.
Yeah. So you are an expert on the topic of fibromyalgia. And it seems like there's some confusion in terms of whether or not fibromyalgia is recognized as an autoimmune disease. Some people say it's not, some people say it is. Can you describe that?
Fibromyalgia is a multi-system disease. It affects a major control center in the brain called the hypothalamus that controls sleep, hormones, autonomic function, but it also affects the immune system dramatically. So you have not just overactive immunity and autoimmunity, but ineffective ability to fight infections all going on at the same time. So there's a major autoimmune component to fibromyalgia, but it's not a single anything. It's a mix of processes with a underlying energy crisis, immune dysfunction, hypothalamic dysfunction.
Okay. So with many autoimmune illnesses, I see that a third of people get secondary fibromyalgia. So how do you tell if this is going on in your case?
It's really simple. If you have fatigue, the paradox of can't sleep even though you're exhausted. So you may be fatigued from the illness, but then you're going to feel like sleeping all day and all night and be able to. But when the hypothalamus controls sleep, when you blow trip that circuit breaker, blow that fuse, called the hypothalamus, suddenly you're exhausted and you can't sleep. You're lucky to get 3, 4, 5 hours a night. That tells you that paradox of can't sleep even though you're exhausted. Now, if you also have widespread pain, brain fog, and then there's literally hundreds of other symptoms, but that tired, achy brain fog, can't sleep, you got it.
Wow, good to know. Very important. Just a way to distinguish what's happening in your body.
Very simple.
And so the causes of fibromyalgia, what would you say the main causes are?
Anything that causes an energy crisis in your body and causes you to spend more energy than you're able to make. So if you see sudden onset, when I ask people, I treat people literally from all over the world, and it's often by phone because people are too old to travel or not able to travel anyway. And so if it's a sudden onset, very often it's post-viral or other infections. So it can be the infections that blow the circuit breaker, or it can be the antibiotic they got for the infections that triggers candida that blows the circuit breaker, or it can be postpartum or post-injury. So that's sudden onset. Yes, it started July 17th, 1997. Or you have the gradual onset, which often is related to hormonal issues or autoimmune issues. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis, multiple sclerosis, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's, all of these can trigger and it's usually gradual, the secondary fibromyalgia, nutritional deficiencies, sleep disorders, anything that causes more energy to be spent than you can make.
And would you say, Dr. Teitelbaum, that applies across the board to all the other autoimmune illnesses that you just mentioned?
It's most of them.
Yeah, in general, just the idea that if you're expelling more energy than your body can make, you're getting an imbalance and you're going to start having some problems in the immune system.
If it's a severe autoimmune disease or it's causing hormonal problems or disordered sleep, that can trigger it.
And you've said that you believe that all these conditions can be treated. So I'm assuming that you believe fibromyalgia also can be treated.
It's not a matter of belief. It's a matter, we've published the double-blind placebo-controlled studies showing 91% of people improve with an average 90% increase in quality of life using our comprehensive protocol we call the SHINE protocol. And statistically, the odds of that happening by chance are less than 1 in 10,000. So this is scientific certainty and proven that it can be treated. We have treated thousands and thousands of people. And it's funny, I mean, people ask, what's a nice Jewish doctor like you doing in a field like fibromyalgia? And it basically, I got it the old-fashioned way. I had it, when I was in medical school. I got the nasty viral infection. I was 6 months later, still non-functional. I had to drop out of medical school, and I was homeless, sleeping in parks. And it's funny, because my world was crushed. My whole life was geared to being a physician. Here I had to drop out of med school with the illness. And it's as if the universe put a holistic homeless medical school sign on my park bench. Naturopaths came by, herbalists came by, energy workers came by, people who taught me mind-body stuff came by, even holistic physicians. And sometimes they had some pizza and they fed me and I ate, And from all those different bits and pieces, I was able to put together what I needed to recover. Found out once I recovered that I would be able to go back to medical school. I didn't even know there was an option. Went back, got my honors in medicine, did great, and have spent the last 40 plus years researching, teaching, and writing about these illnesses.
Wow.
That's fun.
So much to say from having lived it yourself. I mean, your own personal experience is proof, and now there's the science and the research that back it up.
Absolutely. Nothing like being on the other side of the white coat to open one's eyes. Yes,
exactly.
That's medicine.
Absolutely. So is it important to treat the fibromyalgia and the autoimmune illness both at the same time?
Yes, each of them need to be treated like interrelated but separate conditions. So for rheumatoid arthritis, for example, research shows that the antibiotic doxycycline is very, very effective. These are large NIH studies. Why hasn't your rheumatologist heard about it? Because it's a nickel a pill. They're being taught about the expense of other agents that are tens of thousands of dollars a year to give. Low dose naltrexone at 50 cents a pill. Very, very effective. Even for lupus, so DHEA at the higher dosing, but I prefer under a practitioner supervision. There's a host of treatments, low dose adrenal support. You don't need high dose prednisone often. I mean, sometimes you do, but what doctors don't realize is that, they know to give either very high dose or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And though people find they feel so much better on it, sometimes then they wean it down, they get to a certain dose, the doctor stops it, they crash. It's not necessary to go through that cycle. You can use very, 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 very low dose hydrocortisone, the equivalent to about 2.5 milligrams of prednisone, but preferably the bioidentical form, the hydrocortisone at 12.5 milligrams, with no side effects to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the adrenal suppression, and you can get significant benefit with your adrenal helping, because the adrenal is critical. That's your stress handler gland for balancing immunity. So each autoimmune illness is different. Low thyroid, uh, Hashimoto's is how it's treated so miserably in this country. The doctors, I'm a guest on Dr. Oz's show a fair bit, and he's a friend of mine. He's very good despite the media hatchet job because he pissed off some very powerful corporations. As it was funny, it had the congressional hearings where you had people with the integrity of, like, I don't want to say the word, calling him on his integrity. He's a man of very, very high integrity. He and his wife are both awesome. But we talked about what the normal range means for testing. Many of the listeners, if you have thyroid problems, you go to the doctor says thyroid test is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask the doctor, where does the normal range come from? You'll see their eyes will glaze over. And then they'll stammer something like, well, the experts say that if it's here, it's fine, there's no problem. All the expert range means is they take 100 people and they apply what's called 2 standard deviations. That means the 95% in the middle are normal. That's all the normal range is for most tests. And if you're not in the normal and that 95% range, so 95% of the population, that's abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
So a normal range for shoe sizes, this is the analogy I gave Dr. Oswald likes to run with, is a normal range for shoe sizes would be size 6 to 13. Now, I wear a size 12.
Yeah.
Can you imagine we get our shoes mixed up? I'm wearing your size 7 or 8, and you're wearing my size 12 to go to the shoe doctor, which is right next door to the thyroid doctor. And the doctor says, Casey, it's, honey, it's a size 12. It's in the normal range, no problem. And I'm trying to get my size 12 foot into that 8 shoe. The doctor says, no problem, it's in the normal range. If that you're in the normal range has nothing to do with whether you need thyroid or what form of thyroid. Mm-hmm. Tired, achy, weight gain, cold intolerant, constipation, you have 2 or 3 of those, unexplained infertility, you deserve a trial of bioidentical thyroid glandular, which works much better than the Synthroid. But the Synthroid is a major contributor to the endocrinology societies, and that's what's recommended. And you need to adjust it to the dose that feels the best to you.
Right. Keeping
the free T4 from going too high. In other words, if you're at size 13 on it, then it's too high. If you're a 110-pound woman, so you want to adjust the thyroid dose to the form and dose that feels best to you, and then check the test to make sure it's in the normal range for safety. Right. Recognizing the TSH test is the worst, deadliest piece of crap test ever developed in medicine's history.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, I just want to be subtle here. Okay. You check the free T4 test to make sure it's in normal range for safety, and then you adjust to what feels best to you.
Yeah. And I love that because, as someone who struggled myself with autoimmune and Crohn's disease and a number of other diagnoses I've had through the years, the one thing that's been missing is no one's asked me. Of course, in the later years, I got into holistic and integrative medicine, so things have changed a lot, but there isn't a one size fits all. And what one person responds to is very different from what my body responds to. So I like the idea of asking, the patient, how does this feel to you? Are you getting any benefits? And you corroborate that, yes, with these other methods that you're mentioning, but how it feels to the person that's consuming it is so important.
How's it working out for you? And I'm going to give you one other critical tool, Casey, is using our own intuitive sense of what our body wants. So one of the first things I tell people when I treat them is if I recommend a treatment and you're not comfortable with it and you take it anyway, you're not a good patient. You're a fool. If something feels uncomfortable to you, integrity says that you need to say no. And I tell them, just let me know, and then we'll explore it. I'll give you more information than you may be comfortable. And you may say, no, I'm still not comfortable. I'll say, fine. Here are the alternatives. Never do anything you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
First of all, your immune system will be on the uh-oh range, and you're more likely to get unwanted responses. Get the information you need to feel comfortable with it, or find something you are comfortable with so your immune system can welcome it in.
Yeah, that goes back to perception. If you're perceiving something as not good for you, and there is that just natural, innate, intuitive process. For years, I was taking things that each time I would take them, I would feel like, oh, I don't want to take them. And I had all this resistance and I could feel it, inside, but I'm like, oh, I must be crazy.
How did that work out for you?
Just ignore it. Just ignore it. Mind over matter. This is okay. I can do this. I'm being told this is right. Well, many years later, I've had the guidance of, information that you've presented and other naturopathic healers. And they've said to me repeatedly, you must follow your intuition. And usually every time when I did something that I was being told inside that I shouldn't do, it didn't work at all. All right. I actually felt a lot worse.
Yes. And here's the thing. Our brain, our mind is a wonderful tool, but it has no idea who we are. It's basically a computer that's programmed, and then is a very powerful tool and computer that's part of us. Our feelings know what's authentic to us. It's almost like it's tuned into our psyche or our soul or whatever you want to call it. It's us. And it has a much broader sense of information that's coming in, and how it feels is kind of like our authentic soul, psyche, whatever you want to call it, saying, yes, that feels good, that's authentic. It feels bad, it's not bad, it's just not for us. And learning to tune into that, it's kind of like, I give people the example of a GPS in your car. GPS is like your brain. And if you go in your car and say, GPS, take me where I want to go. I don't know where you want to go. Take me where I want to go. It's like, I don't know. Finally, it'll tune in the future and say, here's where all the advertisers say you should go. Okay, and take it there. The feelings are like us setting the GPS. So once you know it feels good, then you can plug it into the GPS, and then it's brilliant. Once you know what feels good for your direction, what's authentic to you, then your brain is this amazing ally and tool that's part of us for getting there.
Yeah.
But you got to use the right tools for the right job. You use your brain to figure out who you are, you're screwed. Sorry.
Yeah. Well,
that's my subtle experience from treating tens of thousands of people over 40 years in medicine. That's a quick summary right there.
And to everyone who views this, if they really take that to heart and just believe that and use that wisdom, it is essential. And
just know it.
Happen. It's the core.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So food allergies are, what would you say about those? Are those pretty common in most folks who have autoimmune illness?
They are, because here's the thing. With food allergies, there's three key components to it. One is incomplete digestion of protein, usually because of the enzymes in food having been destroyed in food processing. Then leaky gut, that's from the gut infections, excess sugar, things along those lines. And then low adrenal. So those three are kind of what gangs up. So you need to address those three. But then once the food allergies hit, you also then to use the NAET or other things to reset the immune system. So it recognizes, no, these are friendly things to take in. It's one, and most people don't need that. But you can see by how you're responding to stuff. That's part of the clinical thing. Is they're literally, in my fibromyalgia treatment list, there are over 350 things. that can be helpful for people.
Uh-huh.
But you can't just say, do these 350
Right.
things. You got to figure out these are the ones that for you are more likely. That's where
Right.
the art is in the healing process as part of the art.
Yes. Yes. And having a collaborative team that can help you sort of hone that art while you're using your own intuition, listening to your body and what you know, like you say, about your authentic self to help you guide that.
I am your guide. I'm not your boss.
Yeah.
Okay. And, I'm here to help you figure through all the data. And then again, I'll let you know what I would do if it was me. But at the end of the day, Casey, it's what feels best to you.
Mhm.
And using the tools that, as your consultant, and along with any other healers and folks that you're consulting with, getting
Right.
the information so you know the information so you can make an informed choice
Mhm.
based on that and what your own gut instinct is, what feels the best to you.
Right.
And suddenly, all these things that seemed, insurmountable walls, you'll realize they're just like fog that melts away in the sunshine. They're
Mhm.
gone. You know.
So for a lot of years, this is 10, 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome.
Mhm.
And at the time, it felt like the medical community just sort of denied that it didn't exist and denied that it was even real.
Of
So my
course, because
peers
we, as a
told me
doctor,
I was
if I don't know
crazy.
what's wrong with you, you're crazy.
Yeah,
Don't you know that? You
yeah. I was basically told I was crazy. I was, in seventh grade. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't go to school. I was a very academic student. It was a huge struggle. And it was many years later that, at the time they gave me the label chronic fatigue syndrome, but that meant I was crazy. Now I'm wondering, when people are diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, is the misconceptions of it changing? And what do we know about it today?
all too slowly. As I said before, the old saying, I don't know what's wrong with you, you're crazy, is really abusive when doctors do that, and it's not acceptable. And if a doctor ever does that to you, I recommend, they say fibromyalgia, there's no such thing, and they try to convince you and your family that you're nuts. I want you to stand up, walk over to them, give them a big hug, and tell them, thank you, thank you for letting me know what a complete and utter idiot you are so I don't waste my time with you.
Yes,
Turn around, walk out the door.
yes,
Yeah. Uh,
absolutely.
if you went to a heart surgeon and he said, there's no such thing as heart disease, or a cardiologist is like, well, okay, I'm probably not in the right place.
Mhm.
Um, so you find somebody who knows what they're doing. Holistic doctors are much more likely to. Now that the drug companies are spending $210 million a year advertising three uh, of the fibromyalgia medications that they've come up with, doctors are hearing about it more, but all they're knowing is to give those three Band-Aids.
Mhm.
And most of them, it's such a complex disease, they don't want to take the time. And some, they're just lazy. So it's just not acceptable. But Casey, here's the interesting thing. You'll find most of these illnesses where the doctor says, I don't know what's wrong with you, you're crazy, have one thing in common. They affect predominantly women.
Mhm.
And to understand the medical model of what's going on here, it helps to look at the medical word hysteria,
Mhm. Yes.
which comes from the Latin word hystero, which means uterus.
Mhm.
Okay, so the word hysteria basically translates to uterus. And that's why doctors wouldn't dream of telling a male, oh, with pain or whatever. And in fact, the studies show that men with pain are more likely to get treatment for the pain. Women with pain are more likely to get tranquilizers.
Uh-huh.
And
Wow.
it's just not acceptable anymore. And this is one of those cases where it's great to just say no.
Right. Yes. And again, to be able to fire your physician and to say, this doesn't work. It's so scary to do that. I remember the first time I did it, I was quite young, and I remember, going to see the physician and asking him about diet and wanting to know. At the time, I didn't know very much about autoimmune, and asking, would diet have any impact on it? And, they frankly told me, if you want to do your own research and guide your own treatment, then you need to get another doctor. And I said, thank you. I
Thank you.
agree. That's really good advice. Thanks for your candidness. And I walked out and of course realized over and over again that the things I had read about, the fish oil, the supplements, the gluten-free, all of those things had phenomenal changes in my system. So,
Yeah. But look at what you gain from all of that.
mhm,
Do you have a sense of your own inner strength and power
yes,
and your own self-assuredness and that your own trusting of yourself?
yes,
All of that was part of the coursework for achieving that,
yes,
as has been the
absolutely.
illness.
It's been years of training. That's why, as a social worker and also for Light Your Sparkle, one of the core principles in the process is empowerment, and I just can't say that enough. Be your own advocate. You're an expert on your own body. Be comfortable saying no. Search out what feels right to you, and create that support team around you that embodies that. That's the most important place to
Absolutely.
start.
Now, here's the thing. With the internet these days, the internet's amazing place to get massive amounts of information, but it's a god awful place for getting perspective or anything like the truth. A lot of what you're going to get is either sales pitch or fear.
Hmm.
And if it's fear, just toss it. You know, if it's fear based, it's just usually not so.
Hmm.
Uh, but how to assess that information is a tricky part.
It
A big
is.
part of what I give to the people that I'm helping and guiding is perspective.
Hmm.
Because having gone through well over 100,000 studies at this point, and uh, you know thousands and thousands of people, um, I, I have perspective about what's in real life, what's most likely. The media, if you read the media, you'd be convinced that people are running around biting dogs all day, as opposed to dogs biting people. It's just
Right.
it's the old reporter thing. Dog bites man, that's not news. Man bites dog, that's news. So it's just so first of all, for those of you with autoimmune disease, let me recommend a really powerful treatment. It's a Tai Chi move. And it's you pause, you calm, you center.
Hmm.
And if you're watching the news networks, if and somebody starts feeling bad, you do this Tai Chi move. You center, you reach out to the side, you grab the remote, and you hit off. Okay.
Good point.
The news media, again, its focus is to scare you and make you hate everybody
Hmm.
so they can sell advertising
Right.
or whatever the owners of the media happen to be pushing. Um, if you think about what we talked about earlier with your immune system taking direction from your psyche, if you're watching all the scary, everybody's trying to kill you, hate everybody stuff all day, your immune system is not healthy for your immune system.
Hmm.
And Mark Twain put it really well. He said, if you read the news, he said, if you don't read the news, you're uninformed. But
Hmm.
if you do read the news, you're misinformed.
Yes.
And that has not gotten any better in the last 100 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Dr.
So,
Teitelbaum, you talk about the SHINE protocol,
mhm.
and can you tell us what the research shows about this and describe it?
Yes. So we talk about fibromyalgia. So if you're exhausted and can't sleep, especially if you have widespread pain, brain fog, you've got fibromyalgia. On our website, there's a simple quiz. It's called Step 2 at vitality101.com. It'll tell you in 2 minutes if you have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. Um, if you do, it's an energy crisis. You've tripped a circuit breaker or blown a fuse called the hypothalamus. Um, and optimizing energy production with what we call the SHINE protocol. That's optimizing sleep,
Hmm.
hormonal function, uh, infections, inflammation, immunity, nutritional support, and exercise as able. Now, this whole thing, exercise for the fibromyalgia is like, honestly, you know, it's every disease. You need to maintain a certain amount of exercise for conditioning. Cancer fatigue has been shown in research to be helped by exercise. Doesn't mean the cancer is not real.
Hmm.
So anyway, different story. But you do those things, and our double-blind study, placebo-controlled study, showed 91% people improved, and over that whole group, it was an average 90% improvement in quality of life. The thing is, there's no single expensive treatment in here. It's not a magic bullet, or I'd be able to own the island I live on in
Right.
Hawaii. So, uh, but so there's no money in it, so doctors don't hear about it. And in fact, it's a funny thing that for your doctor, not your doctor, but for you to be able to hear, we talk about empowerment through information. But did you know that if something is natural or cheap, it's essentially illegal for anybody involved in the sale of it to even talk about the research
Right.
on the product,
Oh.
unless they pay $400 million to $2.8 billion in FDA regulatory fees. So by a quirk in our regulation, anything that is not god awful expensive is illegal to discuss in this country by anybody with any financial connection to it.
Hmm.
How's that working out for us? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's disheartening to me also because I feel like people who are struggling with illness, sometimes, we're so wedded to our insurance company in that you can go and get a prescription, for example, some prescriptions for a $10 copay. But so people sometimes make decisions based on obvious financial barriers. They'll pay the $10 copay because perhaps, going down the street and seeing the acupuncturist or seeing a holistic physician maybe costs $75 to $150. And it always just makes my heart hurt when I think about how often people don't make decisions for what's best for them because of financial barriers and, costs and just the way the system is designed, unfortunately.
Well, people have to work with the realities that they're facing. A lot of people, one reason why fibromyalgia is such a faceless and powerless disease, you figure that given the percent of people with fibromyalgia, the research budget should be about 40% higher than it is. In other words, it's only getting 1/40th of its per person, research funding compared to other illnesses. And that's because it's mostly women who are crippled, who have no money because they've been devastated by the illness.
Hmm.
And it's all well and good to say, well, you spend your money and do this thing that's not covered by your insurance, but then how are you going to pay your rent?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's part of the game we've had over the last 40 years, making effective treatment available for everybody,
Hmm.
even those with no money.
Hmm.
And, it's part of, I don't see any enemies in this. The doctors are good, well-meaning idiots, but they're still well-meaning people, the ones that you sat and talked with and the rest. Um, but the a lot of these things people can do on their own. In fact, I hold a U.S. patent for a computerized physician that we made so everybody with fibromyalgia can get treated. And it's funny, we used to charge $400 to do the program, but we told people if they couldn't afford, you could do it for free. And 80% of people wrote back and said, I'm financially devastated.
Hmm.
And my wife and I decided to make it free for anybody.
Hmm.
So people can go online, do a 15-minute quiz, analyze their symptoms, their blood tests if they have them, tell them exactly what's causing their fibromyalgia or the energy crisis in this case, how to make it go away by optimizing energy.
Hmm.
And it's just all laid out. It's just right there. So it's free. People can go do that. Um, and then the treatment, it's important to realize the cost of a treatment has absolutely nothing to do with its effectiveness.
Uh-huh.
Nada, nothing. So things that are incredibly cheap are often far more effective and safe than things that are very expensive.
Hmm.
Now, there are exceptions, but the one has the body doesn't care what the cost is.
Sure.
So, so there's a article we have on the website about how to get treated if you have no money. I mean, if you what to do.
Yeah.
An enormous amount of people can do, and that's why the Cures A to Z app. It's a free app. I mean, there's a $2 upgrade, but it's optional. I mean, most of the information is in the free app. So it's hard if you don't have any money
Hmm.
or very little money. And when people say I have no money and they're sitting there, drinking a cup of coffee and that they got a Starbucks, then it
A little
becomes a matter of
incongruent.
where are you prioritizing. Take a look at things because
Yeah.
there are things that are 50 cents a day that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
You're spending $6 on a cup of coffee, and usually you can have both if you
Hmm.
really look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I mean,
Mhm.
my husband and I have made a lot of sacrifices for the approach of healing that is all the things that you've talked about. And we have to just find that balance and really prioritize my health. There's
Mhm.
just nothing more important than having your health. And
Sure there is.
when you look at it that way, you find ways.
Casey, sure there is.
Okay,
I'm going to tease you on this.
sure.
You know, you're having food, having shelter for your children, all these things are important. So the key is, because this is really the reason I'm teasing on this one,
Mhm.
is we have this concept, well, the healthcare, it should all be free, and everybody should get every most expensive, toxic, useless piece of healthcare that's profitable out there. But if somebody's starving to death or a child freezes to death on the street because they're homeless, well, we don't have to spend any money on that.
Mhm.
So how about if for all of these things, our health, our happiness, our having a place to live, our food,
Mhm.
these are all things that are our priorities, our love in life, all these different things. And we balance all of these
Mhm.
by going ahead and spending our resources and our time and our energy, in a balanced way for each of these things,
Mhm.
as opposed to every dollar you have should be spent on healthcare, natural or prescription.
True.
So I'm going to quibble with you on that one a little bit. Sorry
Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah.
if I'm teasing.
Definitely. No, very important, because if you have to have a balance between all those things, and we shouldn't have to make a choice between health and family and health and shelter. So absolutely. Thank you for reframing that, because that is very important. And
Mhm.
I love with the Shine protocol that it's dimensional. It's not just a physical focus. It's not just an emotional focus. It's not just a joy focus. It's all the different parts that weave in to help with healing. And a lot of those things are accessible right in front of us every day. They're not things that you have to go out and find. Exercise, sometimes, we don't realize that the things that we're already doing, getting up in the morning maybe and walking the dog, or those are all things that are important parts of healing, that we often don't look at them as a critical component of the healing.
And let me give you the other side. Now we talked about the physical, but then there's a mind-body
Hmm.
spiritual thing. We talked a bit about tuning into what feels good to you and being authentic. But a lot of times you have to reset the limbic system, the autonomic nervous system, vagal nerve, things like that. And there are many techniques. Emotional freedom technique is a remarkable technique for clearing emotional traumas. For those who have the muscle memory that you're storing the trauma in your muscles. And we talk about fight and flight reaction, but what happens if you can't fight and you can't run? There's a third thing we don't talk about, which is called we freeze.
Hmm.
People tighten their muscles. It's like a suit of armor. Daddy's junk, and whatever happens to be, it's a suit of armor. We freeze, and the way that we release that freeze state is through trembling. It's called, you think about like shaking it off.
Hmm.
So you'll see animals that go through the trauma, they go through the trembling when they're safe. And that's how we release the freeze state.
Hmm.
But humans feel stupid trembling. So we suppress it and we never release it. And layer after layer after layer of it comes on. So a wonderful book by Peter Levine, Waking the Tiger. He has
Yeah.
also other outstanding somatic work he's doing now. But there's a host of things: dynamic neural retraining, brain tap. In fact, my upcoming newsletter, we have a free newsletter
Hmm.
people can get on our website, will be on these techniques
Okay.
and how to use them for resetting the psyche
Hmm.
so it can get out of this war zone mode and back into.
Hmm. Yes. So important. I think for many years I focused on just the physical, and then it's sort of incongruent for me as well, because I'm a therapist, and here we are still, working with physicians and addressing physical symptoms. And what about the connection between fight or flight and the nervous system, and how that affects the gut microbes, and everything all works together. So those ways you talked about that we can use to reset it, they're accessible, they're available, and they work.
Mhm. And many of them, like the trembling technique, cost you $10 for the book. It's cheap. You can do it on your
Absolutely.
own.
And that's the empowerment part of it too. These are techniques that many people can do on their own at any time when they need to, and they can learn how to do it, and they don't have to go to, tons of office visits. There's lots of self empowerment with those as well.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. So pain management for people who are in a lot of pain, what's available?
Virtually all pain can be effectively treated. I can count in the thousands of people with chronic pain. I'm a pain specialist at heart. That's just basic what I do. I can count on my digits how many I've not been able to get to solid pain relief for. And most of the time, it's pretty much a non-issue at that point for them. So the critical thing for pain is to realize pain is not an outside invader. Pain is more like our body's monitoring system.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it like the oil light on your dashboard. You know, you have that red flashing light. That's not a outside invader to your car. It's basically your car saying, hey, this needs attention. And medically, what do? We put a Band-Aid on it. And how's that working out for us? We see about 50,000 deaths a year from ibuprofen-related medications each year in the U.S., or 15,000 deaths from prescribed narcotic overdoses. Or we try to chop out cut out the oil like with the surgery. What if you just put oil in the car? And our research has shown if you give your body what it needs, um, just like you put oil in the car, the oil light goes out, you give your body what it needs, the pain goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And the trick is we have no owner's manual for our body. In fact, the Cure's A to Z app was meant as an owner's manual for people's bodies, so they can see what it's saying. So each kind of pain needs different treatments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for a good place to start with pain, um, there's an herbal mix called curamin, and if you have pain, write this down: Curamin.
Okay.
It's a mix of 4 herbs. It's outstanding. It takes 6 weeks to see the full effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 1-3 times a day, even 2-3 times a day in the beginning for 6 weeks. Knock it back. Hemp oil, but there's so many products out there. Some are very good, some are awful. We have a hemp oil product by Terry Naturally. It's one we have on our website at the end, END, fatigue.com. But most of these can be found anywhere. The hemp oil, Amazon won't carry those yet, so that people need to come by our website. But most of these things you can find anywhere. Um, very, very good. It's pricey though. It's about $5, for 5 pills, which is the optimal sleep dose, and 3 twice a day for pain. But can be a game changer for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Kratom, Kratom. The FDA and DEA are trying to outlaw that. Nobody's paid their $400 million regulatory price of admission. And as they tend to be prone to do now, they're just making stuff up to scare people. Um, but I had one gal who lives in Japan who contacted me a few months ago that I'm treating for her fibromyalgia and her pain. And she's been on all different kinds of different pain medications. Nothing's helped. And I told her about the kratom. I said, come, and she decided to fly to the US because you can't get in Japan to
Mm-hmm.
try it. And by night time, her pain was totally gone and she felt great. She's actually thinking of moving here because she can't get in Japan. Um, so there's all these natural things. I would start with the curamin, uh, hemp oil. There's another product called Pain, topical comfrey. Like I say, there's literally hundreds of different things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's for pain in general. You have
Right.
nerve pain. If you have migraines, for example, did you know that, excuse me, 400 milligrams of vitamin B2 a day will decrease migraine frequency by 67% after 6 weeks. Magnesium decreases it further, and the list goes on and on. So you didn't hear about that from your doctor? Oh, I wonder why. These
Yeah.
are double-blind studies. These are kind of recommended things, but they're cheap, so most doctors haven't heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
Each kind of pain has its own. Where there's a recipe for arthritis pain, how to approach fibromyalgia, nerve
Sure.
pain, central sensitization pain, small fiber, blah 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 blah. So yeah, it's treatable. You just need to go after the basic things. But I would note that most doctors, almost their complete education on pain management is give them Motrin related medications or whatever the newest, most expensive Motrin equivalent is. Um, give Don't let them fool you into giving narcotics.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something, well, I don't want to say you can slash for cash, but if there's something you can operate on that's useful, consider that. And anything we don't know about is quackery. I've just summarized the entirety of most doctors' medical education on pain,
Yeah.
which is insanely pathetic
Yeah.
and worse than useless. So you want to find pain specialists who know what they're doing, even consider going outside of the medical profession, chiropractors.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them are very good, craniosacral therapists. There's all different kinds of practitioners. Um, But I have about 10 books now, and many of them will give you different pieces of the puzzle depending on what's going on. Pain free 1, 2, 3. It's a little dated now. It's about 10, 12 years old, but the app is a nice, simple, free way that'll really get people a good start
Hmm.
on that.
Absolutely. Wow, so much excellent information, so useful. And I feel like, you touched on low dose naltrexone and hydrocortisone, and you were discussing how a lot of these uh, typically higher prescribed medications for other things are also used in treatment of these autoimmune illnesses, and just at very, very small dosages.
Yeah, well, the naltrexone, the funny thing is for sleep, for example, if you give a high dose of one sleep thing, you're going to be hungover till 3 in the afternoon
Mhm.
if you get a high enough dose. But each sleep medication is cleared out of its body on its own timetable. So each of them will be out by morning if you use just tiny doses of different things for sleep. And and they're synergistic during the night because the effect comes together. So low doses of several things can often work much better than a high dose of one. And if you properly combining them, taking interactions into account, that can be a very powerful approach
Mhm.
for sleep, for pain, for a host of things. I mean, we just touched on a few things for pain, but there are countless different treatments that can be helpful for pain.
Sure. So, for someone who's newly diagnosed, they go to their physician, they find out they have one of these autoimmune illnesses, and now they've listened to us and they know that finding an integrative physician who can offer them some of these things is a great place to go. They've looked at your website and now they've, used the app, they've read materials. Where do you suggest if they want to try to find a local physician? Are there certain types of physicians that can help them more access these things?
You know, complementary physicians. Again, there's a wide range of quality. Some are off the wall,
Hmm.
and some are too conservative. I was raised in a Hasidic Jewish background. There's an old joke: anybody that's more religious than me is a fanatic, and anybody less religious is a heathen. And I reserve my right to change my level at any time. And
Uh-huh.
so find somebody who resonates with you.
Yes.
And the Institute of Functional Medicine has a or ifm.org, I think it is, has a list of probably thousands of practitioners. Good place to begin.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Teitelbaum, we've covered a lot, and I am so grateful that you've taken the time to, give us all this information, and, people know how to access your website, and I just look forward to, staying on top of the information that you're providing in the newsletter. And thank you so much for doing everything that you've done to help all of us.
And Casey, thank you so much. I mean, take a look in the mirror and see how much you've grown from all these things you've been through, and then embrace them and bless them and forget about them and get on with your life, because all of these things are treatable. They really are.
Yeah.
And get the power, follow your feelings, what feels the best to you. They will guide you to getting your life back. And you will look around and realize this whole thing was a real blessing. When I had it, I mean, it left me homeless and crushed. It
Yeah.
was one of the best blessings that I ever had. And
Yeah.
your illness can turn into that for you. It'll be
Yeah.
easier to see once you're past it and the illness is gone, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way I tried that with Light Your Sparkle. That was sort of the whole evolution of it. Was everything that's happened has truly been a gift. I have such incredible relationships in my life. I get to talk to people like you,
Oh,
and I get the opportunity to, just really learn a lot about myself, and each step is better. The quality of my life is greater. So I agree, what you've gone through, what I've gone through. And, the bottom line is if I can help one person by getting this information out there, that feels really good to me.
mhm.
Let the
Yes.
path be a little less complicated just because the information can be just a bit more accessible.
Yeah. Hey, we're all students, we're all teachers. That's one of the things my wife taught me. And have fun with it. It may seem an odd thing to say, but once you start, you'll be able to. And we're taking it all too seriously. These things are treatable.
Mhm.
There's so much you can do. Just that realization, and then you move forward, and you're going to be amazed how things open up for you. And what you need will come to you. Enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Teitelbaum.
Casey, a pleasure. Aloha.
Bye.
Mm.